Started. Thing we've got here is to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 2019 meeting.
I would motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. Do we have any unfinished business, Bruce?
None from the inspections department.
Seeing none, we'll go on to new business, with the first thing being an appeal requested by Lee Watkins.
Chairman and board, thank you for your time. I'm Bruce with the inspections director. And I want to start out by saying there hasn't been an appeal for some time, so I'm going to spend some time reviewing some of the issues with going through an appeal and the order and some requirements that you're in your authority on an appeal. We're here for an appeal on a decision made by the building official. This appeal is allowed per section 113 of the IBC, and it allows the Board of Appeals to hear decisions made by a building official and or its appointees. IBC section 113.2, it's in your packet. I'm going to read that because it's very important. And it is titled Limits on Authority for the Board of Appeals. An application for appeal shall be based on a claim that the true intent of this code or the rules legally adopted thereunder have been incorrectly interpreted. The provisions of the code do not fully apply, or an equally good or better form of construction is proposed. The board shall not have authority to waive the requirements of the code. So there's three stipulations that you're going to think about when you do your action. And the last line is very important. There's no allowance or authority to waive the requirements of the code. You as the Board of Appeals, more than most people, know the reasons the inspections department does what it does. This is especially true for residential occupancies due to what goes on inside a residential occupancy, especially things like sleeping. I'm going to read several code sections that show importance for a plan review permitting and inspecting a residential occupancy, and those are in your handout. 420.2, separation walls. Walls separating dwelling units in the same building or sleeping units in the same building, and walls separating dwelling units, sleeping units from other occupancies contiguous to them in the same building shall be constructed as fire partitions in accordance with section 708. That's important for a fire separation for somebody especially sleeping in a building. 420.3 is horizontal separation. It has the same requirements, such as a floor ceiling or roof ceiling having a fire resistant rated assembly between the unit and any other occupant in the building. 420.4, automatic sprinkler system. Group R occupancies shall be equipped throughout with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with 903.2.8. There is no exceptions for a sprinkler in a residential occupancy. 420.5, fire alarm systems and smoke alarms. Fire alarm systems, smoke alarms shall be provided in group I1, R1, and R2, which is apartment building. Occupancies in accordance with sections 907.2.6, 2.8, and 2.9 respectively. 420.9, Group R cooking facilities. In Group R occupancies, cooking appliances used for domestic cooking operations shall be in accordance with 917.2 of the International Mechanical Code. I've added that just to show a reference to another code. There's many references to mechanical codes, plumbing codes, and electrical codes throughout all the code bodies. I'm going to mention the IEBC here, International Existing Building Code. There is an option to use that book for this building. It's an existing building. there's a lot of detail in that, so I'm not going to go through that today. It's very similar, except it gives some options in existing buildings, such as you separate more, you might not have to do some things inside, you don't separate, you sprinkle part, you sprinkle the floor, you sprinkle the whole building. There's a lot of options in an existing building. So that comes out during the application, the plan review, and the plan reviewer would go back and forth to get the owner what he wants to do in his existing building. But most of the time, it'll always be sprinklered. Even the area of the residential apartment would be sprinklered in all situations. Specific to this appeal, an inspector working for the City of Fargo acted on this issue due to complaints received at our department. The first complaint came to the inspection department from Rob Severson from the fire department. The fire department does regular inspections of commercial properties and multifamily structures as allowed by the International Fire Code. I'm going to go through the timeline and sequence of events. That's in your packet also. I'll summarize some. On March 21st, 2019, Inspector Rob Severson emailed Inspector James Showalter on an issue he found at 806 Main. His issue was a potential woodworking shop in the lower level of 806 Main, which is addressed at 806 and a half Main. Inspector James left Mr. Watkins a voicemail asking him to call him regarding the issue. On April 16th, Mr. Watkins returned James' phone call and they met in the basement. The notes of that meeting are James found storage of wood and woodworking equipment in the basement. There's a change of use, needs a permit for storage or woodworking, and that work needed to cease. Also, the space had started to be fit up without a permit to be a residence. James told Lee to stop the work and figure out what he wants to do with the space and then get a permit before commencing with work. James informed him that a sprinkler would be required for a residence if that's what he wanted to do. September 10th, 2019, James responded to an anonymous complaint from a customer of the adjacent lease space complaining of bad smells and dust he thought was construction related. Although the complaint originated at 1 8th Street South, I believe the construction from the adjacent space could be the source, so he stopped over at 86 and a half Main and knocked on the door. There's no answer, and there were now blankets covering the windows. James called Mr. Watkins and left another voicemail for him to call. On September 13th, the inspection office received another complaint via email. And the email was that the complainant was in the store located at the corner of Main and 8th. When James was there, or when the complainant was there, he noticed a funky smell and some fine dust in the air. He asked about it because he had asthma, really sensitive to stuff like that, and the lady said something about some remodeling the building was doing in the basement. The complainant didn't see any permit in a window that got alerted into some activity. Since it's such an old building, he worried about what's in the air, hoping we could check it out. And on the next business day, James, in response to the email, stopped again at 86.5 where he knocked on the door, and Luke Hoberg, the name on the mailbox, answered the door and stated he was not living there, just working on some flooring. James asked if he could enter and see if there's any work going on. He required a building permit, and he did not let him in. James asked why his name was on the mailbox. He said he wasn't living there. He just gets packages delivered sometimes. James told him to let Mr. Watkins, the owner, know he was trying to get a hold of him. And James noted those inspections in our software program. On September 17th, 2019, Mr. Watkins returned James' call, and they met in the basement. Upon entering the unit, James saw there was no longer any wood being stored in the front half, but a living room was set up with furniture, full-size refrigerator. There were new walls constructed since the last time James was there. And where there had been a toilet, there's now a new shower and a bathroom, and that had been finished without permits or inspections. A new hot water heater had been installed without permit inspection. There was also a finished bedroom complete with a bed. James asked Mr. Watkins if he remembered what he had discussed back in April, requiring a building permit. He confirmed that he did. And when he asked, did you decide to go ahead and do the work without any permit, he responded by saying, not intentionally. James documented the work going on, asked if he could take pictures. He was not allowed to take any pictures of the work in the unit. Seeing the work had already been completed, James posted the dangerous building placard on, which really does not allow anybody to enter that space. It cites the code sections we're using, and that's work without permit on the placard. You'll see that in some of the pictures coming up. On September 20th, James, following dangerous building procedures, posted the letter, and on the 23rd and 27th of September, he did stop and check to make sure that placards were still in place. You can see pictures in your packet. The first picture shows the buildings. There's many buildings on that corner. You'll see 806 Main Avenue with fronts to Main. Facing east is 1, 1.5, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. 8th Street South. All of those buildings are owned by Mr. Watkins. The placard is posted pretty much in order to inform the owner that he needs to get a permit and have inspections on his work going on. I did check old permits. I went back and checked. There's 7 buildings there on, or 3 buildings on 7 different addresses, multiple tenant spaces. I checked all 7 addresses, and there were 2 permits within the last 32 years for small work going on in some tenant spaces. When Mr. Watkins was in discussing this with us, he said that there's work going on all the time in the buildings. So we're concerned of work without permit. We do have other evidence of work going on. And in regard to the appeal by Mr. Watkins, or to finish the pictures, you can see the other pictures of pretty much the placard and James going into the building. Read the appeal by Mr. Watkins, and in it he states, or wishes for 2 things: removal of the dangerous building designation for no building permit. He states some violations. It's not a complete list of violations. The complete list of what is required is indicated on James Showalter's dangerous building and order vacate letter sent on September 20th. And his second request is approval of rental for NDSU architect, I believe, student as a workshop studio. The inspections department, we would like everybody to have everything they want in their building. And there's a way to do that. Plan review, permit, and inspections would allow that second request. The appellant asks for specific relief of I believe, evaluation of inspections, acceptance of a required permit. I think he's asking us to not require a permit. We will not back off on that. So you are the Board of Appeals for the City of Fargo. You know the codes. Being involved in our adoption, you know what inspection does. We are responsible for making sure our buildings in the city are safe. To enforce that requirement, I'm going to cite IUC section 103.1, which is describing the intent of the code. The intent is, the purpose of this code is to establish minimum requirements, emphasis on minimum, to provide a reasonable level of safety, public health, general welfare through structural strength, means of egress, facilities, stability, sanitation, adequate light, ventilation, energy conservation, and safety to life, property from fire, explosion, and other hazards, and to provide a reasonable level of safety to firefighters in the event of emergency response. To reiterate the action that the Board of Appeals is allowed to take in this matter, you must decide if we did not do our responsibility on our action in this matter, the 3 criteria in the first section of authority. There are 3 things mentioned that you must base your decision on. I feel that the inspections department did everything we could do, what is allowed and required by the code, and I suggest you deny this appeal. I've given you a recommended motion in this matter, and what I'm hoping for in the future is Mr. Watkins does get permits for work and inspections. All his buildings are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. This time, if anybody would like to comment on this appeal, now would be the time to do so.
My name is Lee Watkins, and I am a retired architect. I'm the 3rd generation of my family who has operated the businesses on the prescribed sites on the corner of 8th Street in Maine. This is in a historical section of the city, and as such, it has other requirements than those that have been copied today. I would like to make this very simple, and by saying that the 806.5 has been reduced to eliminate all residential. I have no residential in any of my buildings except one that has been an apartment since I can remember, and I'm 80 years old. So I remember back a long time. So that is the only exclusion that I have. This is primarily for the problems of 806.5. So I have eliminated the residential. I am not intending to ever put any residential in. After talking to engineering and getting some of the data of what it would cost to bring a 6-inch line for a sprinkler system, which would do the entire building. Oh, that's great, but it's not something I really want to do. I have a 3rd floor that I cannot use because I do not have a second exit from it. So I have about 2250 square feet that are totally unusable and are designated as storage. My request, of course, is based on the inspection report, notice of dangerous building, order to vacate. I can't tell you how many times people have asked, what are they going to do? Are they going to tear the building down? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. I have a fairly large investment in that. But if you will look on your notice of dangerous building, order to vacate, the 2nd page, you will see what I'm asking for. And that is that the following actions must be taken. Tenant for basement space must vacate immediately. That has been done. A building permit application and necessary supporting plans and documents must be submitted for the work that has been done. And that also has been done. Gretchen can verify that for me. A permit must be issued after it has been shown that your plans are in compliance with all the related requirements. Well, I'm assuming that that's going to be coming forthwith, hopefully fast, because our weather is changing much too quickly. A complete inspection must be done to verify all conditions. After this inspection, those conditions must be remedied, and I think that I am in the process of remedying everything. And the last item, if a residential occupancy is wanted, it is not wanted. It will not happen. James has brought up another issue that is not in this application for an appeal. It is fulfilling all of the same items, with the exception of the red sign. And the red sign, as far as I'm concerned, must come down because we have met those requirements. And I have a little trouble, in fact, I have a lot of trouble. What is it that makes that building dangerous? And the elements that the conditions found statement say the lower level has been remodeled into a residential dwelling unit. That has been eliminated. A bathroom has been installed or remodeled without a permit. That is true. At the time, the young man who wanted the space said, well, this is perfect for me. I'm a student at NDSU, block and a half away from where I spend most of my time in the downtown architecture department. He has agreed to not sleep or cook in the work study space studio. And a water heater has been installed without a permit. Again, does a water heater cause a building to be dangerous? Does a bathroom with a shower make it dangerous? The remodeling was very, very minor. It became more complex, such things as there wasn't enough pressure in the water system to make the shower work. The very humongous, at least by my standards, refrigerator is something that his parents gave him to put in. And we had to modify some of the walls simply because it was too big. You know, the list goes on, but I have invested more money than I intended to. I will not recoup a positive cash flow from it for a long time, and by that time he will have graduated from, and heaven only knows what will happen next. I've had all kinds of different uses for those buildings, and I don't think it'll change. They rent quickly, and I'm going to introduce Donna well, I'm just going to call her Donna because she has a pretty good idea. She has Reed and Taylor Antiques on 806, the main floor, and she embarrasses me every time she introduces me. So, Donna.
Hello, I'm Donna Ormiston, and I have Reed and Taylor Antiques at 806 Main. My background is I had 28 years with corporate America, retired, and then opened an antique business, which I've been doing for 27 years. 13 of those years have been downtown Fargo. 7 of them have been at least at 806 Main. And I'm here, I don't really know much about the agenda today because I really haven't been aware of what's going on below me. I'm here to speak about the values and integrity of Lee Watkins. If it weren't for Lee, I'm going to speak for all of the retail businesses on 8th Street and Main Avenue. We could not survive. He keeps low rents. He doesn't require a lease. He's there every day for us. He does our windows. He waters the plants. He shovels the sidewalk. He's up on the roof shoveling snow. So all I can say is that in my case, the 7 years, my rent has only increased once, but there's one person on the block who's been there 31 years, and her rent is still $150 a month, which is unbelievable. He supports small businesses in the arts, and we're all grateful to him because if it weren't for Lee, none of us would be in business. Thank you.
And with that, With that, I would like to ask that you agree with my analysis that I've brought to you and ask for the appeal of the removal of the red sign. And I don't want to say harassment, but it's getting awfully close to it from the inspection department. I have worked very, very closely and well with Gretchen and some of the other inspectors. So with that, I would ask you to call for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. It sounds like he started down the road to getting some of the things done. You guys will have to be the judge of that. But my understanding is that all of the things laid out that need to be done in order to get that dangerous building plaque removal have to be completed before that can happen. And I'd like your kind of input on where you see this going and what the outcome can be.
So there's a lot of requirements for the dangerous building placard to go up. Mr. Watkins alluded to many of them, but many of them to us are unknowns. Who did the work? Wiring had to be done. How are you getting heating? Who's doing the plumbing? All commercial work is done by licensed contractors. So who did the work? An owner is allowed to do construction on his own building. Nobody else is allowed to do construction on his building. If he's there, somebody's helping or assisting, that's okay. But you just don't let somebody go free-flowing in a commercial building with building, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So that's the issues we don't know about. So if we had a permit to go in, we would have authority. Mr. Watkins has applied for 2 permits on 2 different spaces. They're in the system for review. They came in the last week. So we are reviewing those. But we didn't really want to act on those until we did this. We did not know for a fact, to get it recorded, that nobody is going to live in there, because he did request to have a living unit in there as one of his 2 stipulations. So if we know that's not going to happen, we can move forward with the review on the plans. No additional work gets done on the buildings. We could remove the placard, but the dangerous building placard should stay up until the permit's written. And we will do our best to get the review done. We did request Mr. Watkins, when it was a residential occupancy, to get an architect. He says he's an architect. I don't know if he's registered, but we can look at the plans to see if we even need design professional on the plan. But the most important thing is to get that permit so we have authority to go in and inspect. So we'll look at those 2 projects. We'll see what that shows. The first plan submitted did have the residential occupancy on it. He had crossed it off. I said that can't be on. He resubmitted a plan with those removed. So we'll move forward on the plan review on the 2 now. But we would like to leave that placard up, and it's only on the door, tell me if I'm wrong, to the basement. It's not on the whole building. So yeah, the letter is there, and it states the conditions. The space shouldn't be used. Permit application, he's done that. Permit must be issued. We want the permit issued. So we need some time to do the plan review and write the permit.
I'll make a couple comments here and then open it up to any of the other board members here that want to comment on that. But the code is written, and as a architect, you know what that's written for. And it's basically a life safety code. And all of the items that weren't paid attention to within that and weren't allowed to be inspected so that it can be verified by independent party, basically the city, that those things are met in that code. That's what caused your problem. And so I think the process is there for you to make improvements to your building. But like every other person that does that, you have to go by the adopted code that the city of Fargo enforces. Does anybody else have any comments on that? With that being said, we do have a recommended motion that I think is probably appropriate for this situation. And it sounds like Mr. Watkins at the inspections department is willing to work with you and hopefully in a relatively quick fashion to alleviate the problems that were found, so that you can continue on with managing your building and your tenants. So with that, would someone like to make that motion?
I will make that motion to accept the findings of the inspections department staff denying this appeal request and requiring the applicant to acquire a permit for the requested apartment unit. In this specific scenario, it sounds like it's not going to be an apartment unit. And we do have plan reviewing being completed. But I would make the motion to accept the findings of the inspections department to deny this appeal.
Have a second.
I'll second it.
Any further comment? All in favor of appeal, denying the appeal, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The appeal has been denied. Mr. Watkins, I would hope that, in working with the city that the issues can be resolved in a timely manner and get everybody back to square one on this and make sure that we have all the life safety issues and things that need to be addressed, so that you have a safe occupancy for everybody that's in there. Okay. Moving on, we have our election of officers due.
So for the election, we're gonna do two things. We're gonna clean up one issue that's come up in the past, and that's alternate. So we'd like to address that first and actually motion and record the recommendation of the alternate to the Board of Appeals, and then go on with the chairman and the vice chairman after that.
On this alternate then, do we have a person that we want to name as the alternate other than the vice chair? Or
So there's been a discrepancy whether you, Clay, or Dave was the alternate. So in our minds, Dave was, but we've been told that the records show that Clay. So the chairman can't be the alternate. So I would recommend going with the current alternate and recording that, getting that recorded, and then go on to chairman and vice after that. And I would recommend that we keep going with what's going, because there's no members that don't, that are at the end of their term. So we continue as we have been going with the chairman and the vice chairman.
Okay.
But we wanted each one recorded just so that the alternate was recorded first to alleviate the issue with Clay being the chairman and the alternate.
We would need a motion then to have Dave be listed as our alternate. Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I will second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we need to go on to picking chairman for this board, so if anybody wants to make a motion on that.
With the absence of several members, is there any specific protocols to?
You need, the quorum needs to vote, so you need 4 votes to act. And you can choose to do what you want today.
Or would it be better to postpone this till the next meeting when there's?
No.
Or today is the day?
And what I've usually seen in the past from Robert's Rules of Orders, although it may be appealing to appoint someone that's not present, it's usually not the right thing to do, so.
And Clay
I would
is
suggest
doing
that-
such a great job.
But I would suggest we pick someone that's within the room and go forward from there.
I'd like to make a motion to continue Clay Dietrich as the chairperson for the board.
And I will second that.
We have a motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. I am renamed as the chairman. And now we'll go on to choosing the vice chairman for the board, which I believe is currently Mike, correct? So if anybody has any input there?
Make a motion to continue with Mike as the vice chairman of the board.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Mike is renamed as the vice chairman of the Board of Appeals. I believe that's it. We're now on to staff reports.
Thank you, that went very well. The only staff report I have is to report on the code adoption. That did go through all the readings and went to commission. It was adopted on August 26th of 2019. So the code is in force today. We've sent out as many notices as we can to industry that it was adopted and it can be used. And but we would like to start January 1st, 2020 as a requirement that all projects come in with that. There's still only relaxation is if design started prior to that you can submit a statement that happened. I wanted to mention that there's been discussions of other amendments. And maybe to say it's, you remember the process we went through to even get the code adopted in the first place. The same process would have to happen if any amendment did get proposed, and they can. You could have a meeting, but then we go through the readings and the commission again in the same step. So if there is a way to do it, what you need to do, look at alternative design or anything in 104 chapter in every code book, find a way to do it legally with the current code. And we've done that through 104. I believe Dave's done it through mechanical systems, known about the 18 prior to it coming out, and we have the book plenty of time ahead of time. And so he's requested to use the 2018, and we've looked at it and not seen issues. So you can do that with issues. You can look at 104 for a lot of different things and propose designs that meet the intent of the code. So try and do that without, maybe we'll get through the next code cycle. We'll be ordering the 2021 book within months, put it that way. So we'll already be looking at the new code. That's all I have.
With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you all.